Good morning, everybody. It's Tracy, and welcome to another episode of What Has Changed Your Life. Happy Sunday. We are outside and enjoying this beautiful weather today. And today we're going to be talking about our parents. And I have a special guest today. Sharon King is a navigator and she is an advocate. And so I asked her to come on here so we can discuss some things about our aging parents. Welcome, Sharon. Thank you for joining me on What Has Changed Your Life.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So, as many of you know, based on my crazy hair and what I look like, I have been looking after my elderly father for, basically since February 10th. And he was recently diagnosed with mild to moderate dementia, which was something that kind of took us and our family way off guard. We had no idea that it was as bad as it was until we were able to go and see him. And that was in the COVID world. And so me working on the floor, my brother working at Sunnybrook, we weren't able to see him. So we didn't understand the gravity of the situation until it was presented to us. And then we realized, oh my goodness, we have a problem. And so then we brought my dad here, and hence I'm day person, my brother's night person, and we're looking after him 24/7. So I thought it was really important to start talking about our parents and even thinking about things for ourselves. I know we're not that old, but it's things we need to think about. So Sharon has been, like I said, a navigator and an advocate. And Sharon, how did you get into that work of looking after these topics that people come up with when it comes to looking after our aging parents?
Actually, I probably started with my own parent, my mother-in-law. Actually, I'll make it a quick story, but essentially she lived on her own in Toronto, and she slipped and fell outside of her house on the ice, hit her head, and basically we had to take her to the hospital in an ambulance. When we had been really in the hallway for almost 24 hours, the doctor that had seen her came up to her and said, Frances, you have a concussion. And you have ovarian cancer and you have 3 months to live. So
wow.
Needless to say, we were shocked. We live in Newmarket. She lived in Toronto. So we realized that we had to try and figure out a way to support her because we couldn't be going back and forth to Toronto all the time. So I had her move to South Lake and basically was her advocate for just over 2 years. So and I think that through having the support of navigation and just being that person who can speak up for the person who can't speak for themselves makes a huge difference. And we were able to extend her life by a full 2 years instead of 3 months.
That's awesome. Carol is joining us. She's saying hi. Let me just put that up on the screen there. Hello, Carol. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all your support. So that is pretty rough that all of a sudden you're thrust into this role of being this advocate for your mother-in-law and navigating that medical world, right? Also, did you have resistance from her when you were trying to help her?
In this scenario, she was very grateful for the support. However, I've worked with many clients that do not want help at all, but their children want help. So it really just depends on the situation. So it depends. I mean, I've worked with many people that their parents are in denial and they think that everything is fine. And, you have to actually create strategies around how to support them to ensure that they feel that it's their decision. And we're just really helping them to stay safe until you can get to them to an end goal, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I know for my dad, my brother and I recognized very quickly that we had a big problem. So hence we had to convince him to leave his home and come to my brother's house because living on his own, the wind is kicking up, living on his own in Gravenhurst when we're down here in Bradford and Newmarket was not an option.
No.
He was not able to look after himself. He wasn't able to feed himself properly, forgetting his meds, not bathing and showering properly.
Well,
We have no
those are the things
idea.
that happen that we're talking about, right? Is that they,
Yep.
they think they can stay on their own because that's what they've always done, and they don't want to leave their home. And the thing is that they do lose interest in cooking. So then they stop eating properly. When they stop eating properly, then they get weak. And then once they're weak, they fall, and then they end up in the hospital or an emergency, right? And then the choices that they could have had before that all happened are basically taken away from them, depending on how they heal. So they may have thought that when I'm ready, I'm going to, go to a retirement residence or stay at home forever. And now they have to go to long-term care and live out the rest of their life in that type of an institutional environment, right? So
Exactly.
it's not a good situation. So I think the most important thing is that we always want to see if we want to make sure that they're safe no matter what, right? And then through that supported safety, help them to see how it can become their decision and the value of it, right?
Right. And the difficult part dealing with people that have dementia and Alzheimer's is, you take them to every appointment. My dad's been to every appointment we've gone to. He's been a part of the whole decision-making process. But one of the tricky things about that is they forget sometimes the whole entire appointment. And
Mm-hmm.
so then you're struggling with you're saying to them, well, Dad, you've been told you have to go to assisted living. You can't go home anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get angry
Yeah.
because you're telling them that they can't go home anymore.
Yeah.
Or when my dad's license was taken away, cars is like huge for him, and
Yeah.
his license was taken away. And all of a sudden, you as the children become the bad people, because even though the doctors and the nurse practitioners said, you know what, you can't drive anymore,
Yeah.
he sees that as we've taken his license away. And he gets
Yeah.
angry because you are telling him something that he doesn't want to hear. So
Yeah.
it's a really difficult situation to be in as the person and the children who's now had to take on this role of looking after everything, which you didn't have to do before.
Yeah.
And how important do you think, like I've tried for years and years and years to talk to my parents about what they wanted if these scenarios happened, if you got Alzheimer's, but they would never ever talk about it because in their minds that wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And yet
Mm-hmm.
here we are. So how
Yeah.
important is it for people to have those conversations with your kids?
Well, I think it's really important. And, a lot of people get gun shy, right? When they try it the first time or the second time with their parents, and their parents knock them down really quickly. And so there's that whole parent-child thing where, your parent was the leader for the longest time in your life. And then as, they're aging, we're sort of switching positions where the adult child becomes the leader and the parent is no longer the leader, but the parent still thinks they're the leader, right?
Yes.
So in those scenarios, a lot of adult children are actually not making the mental transition in order to be able to progress in that role as the leader. So having those conversations is really important. From a logical standpoint is really important. And you have to just continue to do it because it's like what you're saying. Like, I think you were actually really smart about it as well, because you have the conversation, and it's all about, we want to support you, we want to keep you independent, we want to help you as much as we can, right? In order for that to happen, so that you can have all those choices, these are some things that we need to talk about, right? So that could be,
Yeah.
legal. So do they have wills? Do they have powers of attorney, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would happen if they, were on life support and they, were unconscious the whole time? What would you do in that scenario, right? They're
Yeah.
very uncomfortable conversations, but the more that you have them, the more, I don't know what you call it, like, uh, they get acclimatized to it, right?
Yeah.
And then that's how you go forward from there. But you can't just, when it happens and something happens quickly and it's an emergency situation, the adult children are not in a position, when they're highly emotional and their parents are in distress, either
Yeah.
physically or emotionally, to make competent decisions. So it's
Mm-hmm.
all about, what, we want to do what's best for you. And what happens is, in a lot of those situations, when they are emergency situations, is the kids just don't make a decision, and the parent suffers for a longer period of time than they need to. So
Yes.
if they are, breaking down the conversations, figuring out what needs to be done, and then, just keep going around it, just keep going around it. It's not like, if they say, you know what, I want to stay home forever. I like it here. I'm never going to move to retirement resident. Great. That's good. We want you to be happy. But if you're going to do that, we want you to be safe. So in order to do that, since I can't come and take care of you all the time because I have a full family, my own kids, I got a full-time job, I'm not qualified, number one, to take care of you. I don't have the appropriate training. But
Mm-hmm.
number two, make sure that we're going to just have some chats with some home care agencies, and let's just figure out how much it costs and how much care you're going to need, and that sort of things, because there's all kinds of things to consider, and a lot of times they're not being realistic. They don't realize how much that sort of costs. And
I will tell people, it's because we looked at that option first, and it's anywhere from $35 to $40 per hour.
Yeah.
Every time the wind kicks up, per hour, and that is pretty much just in the GTA, so up in Bradford. Now, if you're going up north, where my dad's from, they lived in Gravenhurst in a very remote area. That price is up because they have to go into a remote area. So I know, a lot of people love to move up north to these remote cottages on these beautiful lakes, and that's great when you're healthy. It isn't great when you're not healthy, because I will tell you, my dad lived in Gravenhurst, and because of where he lived, we could not get service there. The nurses wouldn't come in because the road wasn't like in the wintertime, it's icy, it's got snow on it. If you don't have a 4-wheel drive, you really can't get in there, and it's a 2-mile road. And so people were not coming because they couldn't get in there. And that becomes a problem. And I think that's something else people need to think about when they're planning their retirement, time frame, is where are you going, and is there appropriate service if you require it? And exactly, right. So that's roughly the cost of it.
Yeah. But it's always, I'm supporting you. I want to make sure that you have what you need. If you want to stay in this house forever, then let's figure out how we can put the appropriate supports in place. What's it going to cost to have somebody come here and take care of you, right? And remember, it's not your bank account, it's their bank account, right?
Exactly.
So you're not going to be covering the costs. You have your own job, you have your own expenses, you have your own family to take care of. So you need to make sure that they understand that. And then, Dad, what's going to happen when you can't take care of the grounds anymore? You can't mow the lawn anymore, which several people are already in that situation. Well, let's talk to somebody who's going to do that. What's that going to cost? What are all the services that we need to set up so you can stay home and be safe? Oh, we have to find somebody who's going to cook for you on an ongoing basis, right? Because you need to continue to eat healthy, or you're not going to be able to stay home and something might happen, right? So bringing it into their reality, but also talking to them constantly about, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So you're slowly separating yourself and bringing them into the reality of what's going to happen. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a hard transition to make, because oops, sorry. Every time the wind kicks up, and I don't know why, it's actually sitting on something, but it keeps falling over. So I'm going to have to hold it, I think. Because the wind is all of a sudden here, just keep right up. Anyway, so that's a hard conversation to have. And I know that, my parents were very resistant to having those conversations, because they felt like we were taking something away from them, which wasn't true, because really what do we have? But when it comes to, for my dad's case, for example, all his money is tied up in his building, in his house.
Yeah.
So then you have to have the conversation of when to sell the house.
Yeah.
Right? In order for them to have all these things that you just talked about, because they're not cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. So I mean, those things they're all going to happen. Like if they have their powers of attorney though for property and for care set up, then there should be there's a sort of you're there to act as a counsel to them, right?
Yeah.
That's part of your role as a power of attorney. So you can, say, I sought out this type of advice. This is what they're suggesting to us, and again, bring it back to them. You want to stay in the house? We want to support you 100% with that. if you're going to do that, though, I need to make sure that you have the right supports in place so you can be safe and healthy, because I can't be here for you all the time. I have a
Right.
client who just her mother and father. The father passed away in January, and so the mother's been living in this 3,000 square foot house, 2 stories on a 5 acres of land. She only uses 2 of the rooms that are in there, and since her husband's passed away, the 2 daughters are there every day, alternating back and forth, right? They both have families, they both have kids, they both have jobs, and it's not sustainable. So
No.
what we are talking about doing now is the mom just doesn't care. She just assumes they're going to stay there, and that's the way it's going to be. So we're looking at the strategy of number one. Great, you want to stay home? We're going to support you in that. Let's start interviewing different companies to make sure we have the supports in need, and make sure you have a budget for it, right? And then the
Right.
other part is the sister and her, they have to start weaning off their mom. So what's going to start happening now is that every other day somebody's going to go there. And rather than staying all day with her and sleeping overnight, because there's a lot of guilt this woman is attaching to them, which they are so
Yeah.
susceptible for because they're her children, right? If she gave it to
Right.
me, I'd be like, whatever, right? But there's the emotional connection, right?
It's the emotional
So
connection.
exactly. And so this is their first level, is they're starting to have those conversations about supporting you living at home, and they're starting to talk about, well, you know what, COVID's not going to be on the horizon forever. You know that my husband and I are retired. We want to go to Europe for 6 months once things sort of level out with COVID. And we're planning for that trip, and talk about the trip all the time. We're leaving here.
Yeah.
This is when we're leaving. This is where we're going. This is, all this sort of stuff, um, so that she starts to experience it real world, because then she's going to be alone one every other day, right? And they
Yeah.
can do that for as long as they, feel safe doing that. And the mom will eventually come to see. It could take a month, it could take a couple of months, but she'll start to see that, oh, I am alone, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is this what it's going to be like for me, right?
Yeah.
And then they start to just soften up a bit, but you kind of have to give them what they want in order for them to see that they don't want that, because it's not, they think they want it, but really it's all about, they don't want to give up their independence, and they feel that we're
Yeah.
trying to take their independence away from them, or their choice. And so we're
Yeah.
trying to always give them as much choice as possible. That way it's
That's
their
right.
decision, right?
Yes, absolutely. Carol saying, great info. Thanks for sharing your stories and expertise. Absolutely, Carol. That's why we're here. We want to make sure everybody has enough information as possible. Oop, there we go. So absolutely, because they want to feel like they're still making the decisions. Because it's really hard, I think, for anyone
Mm-hmm.
to recognize they need help and that they're getting older.
Yeah.
And none of us want to have those conversations with ourselves,
Yeah.
admitting that I can't drive anymore, admitting that I can't do the same things I used to do before. Those are hard realities
Yeah.
for every single person.
Yeah.
So creating that space for them to still make those decisions is really important, I
Mm-hmm.
think.
Mm-hmm. It is. And yeah, and the other thing too is that, like, we talk about them having lots of choice and maintaining their independence, but the other thing is they don't see themselves like we see them, right?
Yeah.
They see themselves as this, if they were a vital person who was always in who was a dancer, or who was a dedicated school teacher, that's how they see themselves. They don't see themselves as they are now. They see how they were. So
Yeah.
having those conversations and making sure that they understand that you recognize who they are, even though you're not maybe having the best relationship with that, but taking that step back and starting to have those conversations, the legacy conversations, right? This is
Hmm.
why they're resisting. They don't want to let go of their legacy. They want to be known for something, right? So
Right.
having those conversations, acknowledging their history, who they are as a person, and then they feel that you're really listening to them. And again, it's going to be more so about, okay, so they're not going to be so defensive, right? It's going to take time. These things don't happen overnight. If you go over there like and bulldoze them, it's not going to work out nice.
It's not going to end well. It's
No.
not going to end well at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
So
So you
in
just have to
terms
have a plan.
mhm. And in terms of power of attorney
Mm-hmm.
for for you as your child or whoever they pick as their POA, do you have a recommendation of when people should get that for their, like, I'm thinking myself, when should I get a POA to say, okay, you are going to look after my care, you are going to look after my finances?
Well, I mean, I think that your power of attorney should be in place as soon as you get a will. So, I mean, I've had wills like since I was 25 and my powers of attorney. So, I mean, those are things that you want to check with your parents. Do you have a will? Which you'd be surprised how many people don't have wills,
Don't. Yeah.
right? And
My
when
parents
those,
did.
you're what?
My parents had a will and a
Yeah,
POA, which is easy, which makes
yeah.
life easy.
But you also
Yeah.
have to remember that if you're setting up a power of attorney, which should be in conjunction with your will, it's not you're going to be my power of attorney. Okay. It's, well, what does that involve? Like, do I really want that responsibility? And having that conversation with them saying, this is my
Mhm.
role as the power of attorney. That's a lot of responsibility for me. If I don't think that I can do my job properly, then I think you should pick somebody else to do it. And run
Right.
down those types of scenarios of, well, what if? Well, what if, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of people don't even understand what a power of attorney's role is, right? And so it's a choice. Just because she's your mom doesn't mean you have to be their power of attorney. But if you are going to go down that road, make sure that it's clear between the two of you and you have those conversations so that you
Yep.
can not, 10 years down the road or not if there's a sudden accident, be in a situation where you guys are butting heads, right?
Yes.
So
And also
those
having a living will is very important as well, because then it tells you if something happens and these are the things I want done, these are the things I don't want done.
exactly.
And those you can get very easily with in conjunction with the will as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm. And
definitely.
that way there's no guesswork,
No, and
right?
that's the thing is that the kids, like I
Yeah.
said, the kids don't like to make a decision because then they feel guilty because they're like, what if I make the wrong decision? Right? So they don't make a decision and then the parent suffers, right? We don't want
Yes.
that. We don't want any
No.
suffering. We want clarity.
No. Yes. I love that. We want clarity. Absolutely. Man, but it's for me, I've been very lucky because Sharon's been a part of my journey with my dad and has been very helpful to me along the way. Because I remember at the beginning, I was texting Sharon going, "Oh my God, this is happening. And I don't know what the hell I'm doing." Because even though I'm in healthcare, this is a completely different animal when you're dealing with your parents and you're dealing with all of these things that are now happening that, you know, you didn't expect
Yeah,
to be happening.
yeah,
So one of the things I've learned through this whole process is a lot of patience. And because again, you're dealing with someone who has dementia and, Alzheimer's, and there is that repetitiveness that has to come with that,
mhm,
right? And so
mhm,
being patient and not constantly saying, "Oh, Dad, I told you that yesterday,"
yeah,
because they really don't genuinely remember that you told them yesterday.
yeah, yeah.
So,
So there's
yes, go
there's
ahead.
some good there's some good like things that you can do in those scenarios to help them as well, like visual aids, right?
Hmm.
So one of the people that I'm working with right now, she was having the exact same situation where she would be talking to her mom, logically, but this is what we said we're going to do. You're going to be moving to a retirement residence because of this reason, this, and this. And the mom's like,
Yep.
yep, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then the next day, they'd start to go forward with their plan, and the mom's like, I'm not moving to a retirement residence, right? And so one of the
Yeah.
things that they did is they created visual aids. So that's really just giving like a large board or something in their house that, these are some of the things, listing off the things that you've had as conversations are concerned, right? Get your mom to sign it with a piece of chalk or videotape the conversation and say, oh, don't you remember this, mom? Look, it's on the board here. Oh, here, remember we had this conversation? Then you don't have to
Yep.
go through the fight again because they're going to look at it and go, oh yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah,
Hmm.
let's go ahead and do this because they're seeing it. They might be shocked. It might take them a couple of minutes to adjust, but those are things that can help speed up the process when you provide those visual aids to them so that they can glance at them on an ongoing basis and that you actually have visual proof. So you can
Right.
use one on its own or you can use them both together in conjunction,
Both. And
right?
also good for their memory too, in terms of having a whiteboard to say even something as simple as today's date, today's month, what year it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know people are like, what? But honestly, unless you have that in front of you, how are
Yeah.
they going to know? right?
Yeah.
So that helps their memory with those types of tools as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Do you
You
remember
can use it for so many different things.
the movie 50 First Dates?
Yes, Adam
Okay.
Sandler.
Yeah.
Yes,
So that's the same sort of idea. Remember, every morning he'd give her a videotape, and every morning she'd watch it. She'd like go through the whole of the trauma of her life, and then she was like ready to, begin the day as the person that she is, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, it's sort of the same idea. Like, I have another person that I'm working with, and she lived in her condominium for like 60 years or something like that, and we moved her in probably 2 years, or sorry, 2 months ago. But every morning, because she had some really heavy duty trauma when she was a teenager during the war, and
hmm
it was a very harsh experience for her. But when she woke up in the morning every day, she didn't know where she was. And so
hmm
basically, we had a little pad of paper. So when she woke up, there was a paper like beside her that says, "Look in the pad," right? She opens up the pad. The pad says, today's date is, you're in the Bradgate Arms. This is your home now, right? All of
hmm
all the things that you love are in here, right? And then she'd do that and she'd read it, and then she'd be like, oh, okay. But if she
Okay.
didn't take the time, like if she didn't read it because she wasn't following the instruction, which she's very good at following the instruction, she would go into a panic attack. So
Yeah,
there's another like way to support them, right? Is give them little clues like you're talking about. Tell them what day it is.
yeah.
Um, where are you? What are we doing today? All those sort of little things make a big difference to make them feel more comforted.
And also feeling a part of the process too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Like every morning I say to my dad, okay, this is today, this is the month, this is the year. And then I would tell him what appointments he has for the day.
Hmm.
This is where we have to be. And then I always prep him the day before as well,
Yeah,
so that he's like, okay, I have something coming.
yeah,
So that way, when the time comes, you're not throwing it at them.
yeah,
Because the one thing I've learned is he doesn't like things that are sprung on him.
yeah.
He doesn't cope well with that anymore.
Hmm.
So I always prep him the day before and then the morning of and say, okay, Dad, today we have to be here, here, and here. Or whether it's a phone conversation with a physician.
Yeah,
Okay, Dad, at this time we're going to come to the table, we're going to be on the computer or the phone.
right.
And so when you prep them, I think that's also very helpful so that they feel like they're a part of what's happening around them when they
Yeah.
have not as much control.
Yeah, oh, definitely. And just always when you're having conversations, once you find out what their goal is, always be, this is reinforcing your goal, Dad. This is how we get to your goal, right? Just always
Yep,
reinforcing that, right? It's not you. You're just
yep,
the facilitator, right? If somebody says, you can't live on your own anymore because it's not safe for you, it's not you telling them that. It's, Dad, this is what the test results came back. This is what they're saying to me. Like, more than anything,
yep,
I would like you to stay at home. I think that is the best place for you as far as you would feel comfortable. But this is what they're saying. So I think we need to sort of consider this. And you also have to remember that people your dad's age, between the, I don't know, 70 to 100 years of old, very high respect for authoritative figures. So if their doctor's telling them something like that, they're going to listen versus
yep,
over me, their daughter,
yep,
right? So,
exactly.
yeah.
And there's and when if they have to go into a assisted living or a facility like nursing home and things like that, there are different levels that are in the nursing homes. Or you can do private where you can go to assisted living and then to memory care floors and you pay out of pocket. And some of the nursing homes are subsidized. I'm just giving this for people for their information. Um, they range depending, like assisted living can be around $5,000 a month for assisted living. And that's having PSW, helping them shower, get dressed, checking on them, nursing care, meds, all those things.
Hmm.
So those are just some figures for people to keep in mind.
Yeah,
Also, if they go into a memory care floor that's not subsidized by the government, you're looking at about $7,000 a month.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So it is not definitely not a cheap thing that has to be done.
Yeah.
So
No.
thinking about that ahead of time for ourselves
Yeah.
is, I think, very important.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
yeah, and the nursing home option is, now correct me, Sharon, if I'm wrong, but it's a subsidy is about 25 to $3,000 a month, correct?
It's closer to 2000 a month, I'd say. Yeah.
2,000 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it really, well, it depends on how much they paid into it their whole life, right? That's what the
Right.
determining factor is. So, and then they either stay at the very basic level where, they don't contribute, or as they, and that would be more like in a long-term care facility, right? Which is government
Right.
run, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, or if they, are um, able to add more funds to it so that they can get a private room, then that's where the price starts to go up, like you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. So there's long-term care is one way, right? Which is the public system. And then there's retirement residences, which are private
Which are
systems, right?
private. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a cost to them as well. So you just always have to remember that whatever the monthly fee is, part of it is rent and part of it is the hospitality fee. So that includes things like all their meals, their recreation, their diapers, their activities that they're doing, their could be their medication administration.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is included in that price.
And sometimes it's not.
And sometimes
And
it's
I will,
not.
and sometimes it's not. Some companies use a depends, like a tenant's diaper service, where you pay separately for that.
Hmm.
And some places, because it's a nurse practitioner, it's a monthly fee for that nurse practitioner to be available to provide
Yeah.
service if you
Yeah.
require it. That's
Yeah.
another fee. And
Yeah.
then, of course, on top of that, you've got your phone,
Yeah.
TV, internet, if they're still able to use those things and
Yeah.
require those things. So it definitely adds up.
Yeah.
It definitely adds up in the grand scheme of things, for
Yeah. Like
sure.
if they're communicating their like community well, they should be able to list out for you everything that's included, and then anything that's not included should be on an additional list. I would never sit down with somebody and then start spewing stuff out saying this is included, this isn't included, this is included, this isn't included. It's too confusing for people. It's a huge
Yeah.
process going through assessing this sort of stuff, and it's a life-changing decision. So,
Hmm.
um, those are the things that you have to find out first is what is the basic stuff that is covered, and then what costs on top of it. And then you can work through it based on what you know, because they're going to be able to tell you how much care your parent needs at that time.
Yes.
And they might
Yes.
be able to even tell you or give you an idea of how it will progress so you can estimate costs. Because if you can't get that clearly defined by them, then I wouldn't be dealing with them, because you don't want any surprises at all in those types of scenarios. Um,
Exactly.
so it's important for you to know that information so that you can budget appropriately as well, right? You don't want to go into a place that you're maxed out on your budget and you haven't even addressed care yet, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. No, it's absolutely. And interviewing and looking at the different places. Um, and I mean, I know one of the things that we dealt with was, because my dad lives so far away from us, an hour and a half north, we chose to bring him here to where we live so that my brother and I can look after him. Because that is a huge deal when they live so far away
yeah,
and something goes wrong,
yeah,
or something happens, or they have to go to the hospital, or this appointment needs to happen, and that you're not right there, and nor can you visit them every week,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because if they're an hour and a half away, that's a whole weekend that you have to go and deal with everything and you know
yeah.
visit.
Well, and people
This
don't understand.
way, yeah,
Go ahead.
this way we brought him close to us so that we
Yeah,
could be literally 10-20 minutes at most away
yeah,
from him,
yeah,
so that we can help him. And some people are like, well, you're taking them out of their environment and you are, taking them away from their friends. The problem is the friends going to be the ones to deal with the stuff down the road? They're
no,
not. And I
yeah,
know people are like, oh my God, that sounds so harsh. They should have a choice of where they live.
yeah,
Yes, but in the long term, when you're looking at the bigger picture, it's not the friends that are going to be looking after them. It's going to be you,
yeah. No, it's very true.
right?
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so you should put them in a place where it's close, that you can help them, and it's reasonable,
yeah,
right? It's reasonable for you to get to. It's reasonable that you can go there and visit, because that's what's going to become important in the long run.
yeah,
It's going to
yeah,
be the family coming to see that person and spending that time with them,
yeah,
the grandkids coming to spend the time with them.
Yeah. Well,
You
and it's like
know,
you're saying, if they say, I want to stay up north, okay, well, if you stay up north, we can help you with that. But that means nobody's going to be able to visit you very often. Is that going to be okay with you? Because if you come and
yeah,
move closer to us, like we can see you all the time because we miss you and we want to spend time with you, right? So,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly,
But, and
exactly.
the other thing though, too, I just want to mention though, is like people that are caregivers get, are misunderstood. So, number one, people don't understand the amount of work that's involved in caregiving until they actually have
Yes,
it happen to themselves, right?
yes, yep,
It's it
100%.
is it's a thankless job most of the time. It's exhausting. Lots of times we take it on because you know we feel we have to, even though we're not qualified for it, right? Because they
Hmm.
just don't know where to go. So we have to take those things into consideration as we're going forward as caregivers, right?
Yep.
And so yeah,
And
people are gonna,
caregiving involves, sorry, caregiving, I just want to mention caregiving involves changing diapers, bathing them, sometimes feeding them,
yeah,
right?
yep,
It's it's not the great stuff when
no,
you're talking about caregiving,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's
And
not
this
that
is
I
what I
love you, you're wonderful.
no, you're wiping somebody's ass. You're
Yeah,
wiping your parents' ass. I mean,
right.
it's true. You're
Yeah,
wiping their ass,
yeah,
right? You're
yeah,
changing their dirty diapers. You're bathing them. They're showering them.
yeah,
You're helping them shave. You are
yeah,
helping them with foot care. You're helping them with all these different things that is real
yeah,
because that's what you have to do as a caregiver,
yeah.
right?
Definitely. Yep.
If
Yeah.
they have
And
diarrhea in the night, you're cleaning it up.
yeah. Luckily, you're more qualified probably than a lot of people that are out there because of your nursing background. But
I know.
yeah, it's a lot. And you know the thing is people are very quick to judge people that are caregiving, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes it's easy to give into that, well, he wants to stay up north where his friends are. But it's like you say, his friends aren't going to be taking care of him, right? And
Nope.
we want to take care of him because we love him. If you want to take care of him, you can do that, and we'll sign you up as the power of attorney, but you
Yep.
know, so it's important that that as a caregiver, you can try and separate yourself emotionally. And I encourage people, if they are caregivers, go and talk to somebody who's a professional. Don't just try and figure it out all on your own. Like, and I mean, psychiatric, mental health is so important. How can you do a good job for somebody
Absolutely.
else if you're not taking care of your own health, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, and they
Yep.
can really help you, and they're not going to tell you what to do, but they're going to give you options based on your situation, and then you can choose. You're in control, you have the power, right? But it
Right.
also will let you be able to see things in a more realistic standpoint.
Definitely.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do you know what organization would somebody reach out to talk to somebody about how to get those services, like how to get help if they need it or guidance?
Well, I mean, like, it depends if you're working or not. So if you work with a company that has an employee assistance program, generally, with employee assistance programs, they'll have like up to 8 sessions in urgent situations where you can go and talk to, well, or you can speak to them over the phone, and they can help you sort of get through that rough patch and then make referrals for you. So if you felt after the eight sessions that you had that you still needed to have some more coaching or support, they can help search those people for you, right? There's also
Yeah.
the Ontario Caregivers Organization. I think it's the OCO. It's a new organization that the government set up within the last 2 years. There's tons of support
Ooh.
tools on there, which are really fantastic. I can send you the link after we get off. But oh, so or even I'm just trying to think of what else. So like if you're in association with the Alzheimer's Society because you have a parent who has
Mhm.
cognitive disabilities in that area, call them. They have counselors there that can support you as well. You can, so there's lots of options out there, as well as the government has increased the amount of publicly available mental health support. So
Mhm.
even just calling like the what is it, telehealth, I believe
Oh
they
yeah.
should be able to put you in the right place for that. So there's, or look out. I mean, it depends what your financial situation is. If you're looking towards, hiring somebody to help you with the navigation part, then that's something that you can do. Or if you feel that you can do it on your own, then there's lots of resources out there. It's just a matter of taking a step back, breathing, and then looking into what you can find.
Yep. And I think knowing that you're not alone
Yeah.
in this world of, elderly parents and Alzheimer's, dementia, or just in the fact that your parents have broken a hip and now they need to go into a nursing home because they can't go home anymore. We see that a lot at the hospital. It's just knowing you're not alone and that there's
Yeah.
help available for you if
Mm,
you want it.
definitely.
And yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sharon, for joining me this morning on another episode of What Has Changed Your Life. I hope this helps everybody or someone. Share and like and follow, and we'll see you next time. Have a great Sunday, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Tracy. Take
You're
care.
welcome.